Of Board of Directors of Alexandria Sanitation Authority, now known as AlexRenew. Take a minute, take a look at the agenda, and we'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as it appears. So moved. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Secretary, any members of the public?
No members of the public.
He must be keeping.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's take a look at the consent agenda minutes from our June meeting. Motion to approve the minutes from
Mr. Chairman. I think on page 4, the first paragraph, it says the revised policy be reviewed pending additional review. I think the first review should be tabled.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the word.
Revised policy table pending additional. Any other changes? Motion approved. Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Nice luck. Member committee updates. Not been a lot of committee community meetings because of the campaign. That was nothing in my area. Anybody else? All campaign related. Finance and audit meeting coming up in November. Anything else?
Other than the audit review on the corner shortly. Working on it then.
Governance. Couple of policies to approve tonight. Other than that.
We go to the green folder.
Absolutely. The
Governance is coming up on October 28th. And since we're off in August, we figured we'd prep now for the governance meeting. So we put a draft agenda in the green folder for the upcoming governance meeting again on the 20th of October. Just would like you all to take a review and look at the feedback from Mr. Gill for staff, and we'd like to finalize the agenda by say August 20th. In addition to that, on this, behind the draft agenda, we also included the assessment that we did last year, the board annual assessment. We'd like to do another assessment this year now that the board's been together for a full year. And the feedback we'd like to get in the assessment from last year are the questions, if we'd like to change the questions up at all, modify the question, or add anything that the board sees as something new for government.
I like the fact that we're going to have board succession planning.
So yeah, we put together a draft, the draft agenda. There's 2 policies that we haven't touched since we started back in February. That there's community benefit, and the other one is the rate rules and it's not really rules and regulations, but it's a rate policy. That seems like it should be folded as financial, but those are 2 things we'd like to discuss. Really talk about succession planning. We started with our new onboarding process after Ms. Hammer started. We have an onboarding process, and then really talk through some stakeholder items. We'd like to revisit the community meetings matrix. We have the right matrix. We have the right representation. Are we going to the right areas of the community? That's one item. we'd like to talk about ongoing board education and planning for some upcoming annual retreats after 2025. And Ms. Waters will also be a brief update on government.
Those are all good topics. But I think, the community associations are one means of getting input, but not the only means. And I'm wondering how relevant they are for certain sections of the city. Certainly in Old Town, they're representative, perhaps in my neighborhood and Delray, some of those. But in West End, I'm not so sure. Right. Good topics. You need approval of this or just reaction?
Yeah, I take it, if you're seeing it for the first time, give feedback to Mr. Beal. And then we can revise this in August to we'd like to get a revised list of questions out sometime in early September, so we can have responses by the October business meeting. So feedback on the agenda would be nice, and then feedback on the board assessment, if there's any questions you want to change or add.
So the first of September. Well, survey.
That's fine.
Mr. Beal, can you ride herd on this?
Yes, sure.
Everybody is heard. Very good.
One other item too on governance is every board member should be a member of Water Environment Federation. If you checked your AlexRenew email recently, you should have gotten an email today for logging in and signing up for WEC. And the intent is making sure that we're getting the all AlexRenew employees are members of WEC. We want to ensure that the board is getting that same information that we get on a daily basis. And there's a lot of resources online for learning. Mr. James, I don't think we ever signed you up. So you realize that over
Exactly.
his handwriting, I'm assuming the same.
And, well, I'm already a member
Okay.
for my day job, but sign me up. Yeah.
Other board members, I'm not sure if you've logged in, so this is just re-upped all 5 accounts.
Well, I know we're going to move on to board retreat. Want to say a word about that?
We've gotten all of our speakers lined up, just did that last meeting, so we're currently putting together some slides for the board retreat and working through some options to respond to the pricing predicament email that we got, 3 months ago regarding some different ways to structure our customer classes and rates. Been working through that. And Danny is one of our speakers. Again, it'll be Terry and Diana from Raftellus, Danny, Theodora, and Rob Worry from Raftellus on day 1. And then day 2 is a workshop to talk about different scenarios. And we'll likely have action items coming out. We'll likely not make a decision on anything after the workshop to kind of throw out scenarios and make modifications. We'll have some scenarios prepared based on previous questions.
Good. You're very important. Anything else to come? Good. Let's jump right into unfinished business. Compensation policy. Kick this around a good amount. The revised version is much cleaner than its predecessor. I have one question just to start the dialogue. Mr. Carlos, it seems like a big part of this depends on this every 2-year survey, right? Compensation survey. How much work goes into that?
Wow. Yeah, we use an outside consultant to do the work, Gallagher.
Okay.
And then our HR team would go through the results, review the document. It's a relatively 6-month process. Go through and do it. Feedback?
You answered my question. We don't do it ourselves. We have a third party.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Questions on the compensation policy? One of the times. Gone over this a couple times, so we're voting if folks are ready. Approved. Second by, and all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now moving on to the next policy. Which is the delegation of authority. This one, I think, we began to look at last meeting and decided we wanted to spend a little more time on it. Mr. Jakes, I know you may have a question.
Yeah, I have I reviewed, I had some questions, basically related to how, giving CEO authority and making it the right term, whole sense. I think in general, most of these kind of governmental situations, most of these kind of policies put a cap on it. So it says 25% of contract, well, our tunneling contract, almost 500 million. So that would be $100 million change. I mean, that's not going to happen, but the policy would basically not put a cap on, at least the draft we have in front of us, on the amount of change order. I think that there should be some kind of cap on change order before it comes forth for approval. And the sole source determinations is another one where I think it needs a cap. And my last comment was emergency contracts. It's not defined. It just says emergency contracts. And I think that it needs some definition or some site of the whatever state code defines it, cite a state code section. So those are the right.
So I think based on the feedback that we had back and forth we had earlier is the code, that code language, it is ambiguous with the 25%. I think the code set up for 25% of like a $25 million job or whatever the state department sets for that project size, and it's usually around $25 to $30 million. So I think what we would want to do, the proposal that we made today was like set anything over 250 million would be its own delegation of authority policy. It's very common practice for municipalities and authorities for these mega projects like the AlexRenew, and then have a sliding scale percentage that gets adjusted based on your cost. So if it's 0 to 25 million, it might be 20%. If it's 25 to 50 million, it might jump down to 15%. That way it's the percentage of the contract isn't one set 25%, but it would be adjusted to, account the contract value. Most jobs have a change orders, normal change orders between 4 and 6% or so, some up to 10. Just something to kind of catch the day-to-day changes that happen on the job. Set a design document, so perfect.
Now, I had similar concerns. One on the emergency contracts. One of the phrases I would like to see in there is where the total value can be covered within the approved operating and capital budget. It almost goes without saying. The second point, at the very end of the delegations, the CEO will document when these authorities are used in the monthly report to the board of directors. Let us know when you exercise. And what do we want to do here? Table this again for another rerun?
Yeah, we have a delegated, there's already a delegation policy in place. I think the whole point of this one is the memo, if you read through the memo, is really to clarify the limits for staff, because they're, this ended up becoming a tool that we use day to day for administering a contract, mainly construction contracts. So we'd like to make sure we get it right, and there's no rush in getting this approved. So I think we can keep working on some drafts and trade drafts between now and September, and we're fine waiting until October until the governance meeting. I don't think there's a driving need to get this done right this second.
I think we're getting close, but not quite there.
I think the point Mr. Jinks brought up are great. You never would think that you apply 25% to a $454 million job and then have $100 some million of change order approval without going back to the board. That's like 5 projects.
Yeah.
So I think anything over 250 needs to have its own specific project delegation of authority. That those big projects like AlexRenew would be covered under that. We don't have any of those necessarily on the horizon, but what would happen on a big job like that is it would be delegated authority from the board of the CEO, and the CEO or the project director would have a certain delegated authority to approve change order. That's lesser.
Any other comments? So we'll table it for further enhancement. Bring it back. Next topic is very exciting. Right. Lease agreement. Barb.
So maybe about a year ago, we had a meeting with the city just to onboard the new director of transportation and environmental services. A visit remote from city for a tour of the facility, check out the tunnel and check out the building. And we went through an entire tour of the building, including sustainability elements. We stopped on the 5th floor, and the city had asked, hey, what's the space being used for? And at the time, we were planning to build out the 5th floor to be used for co-locating our maintenance, engineering, and ops departments. We're going to try and get everybody onto the same floor. We also are going to use some of that space for filing storage, so there's central location for filing storage. And the city said, they were looking for temporary space for their 3 groups out of transportation, environmental services that support, water and wastewater. Water and wastewater. So we had a few discussions with the city, and it made a lot of sense for us to try and go back and look at how we house our staff in the building, see if we can support the city's use of the 5th floor and facilitate all water services under one roof in Alexandria. So after that, we came up with a floor plan that gives the city about 60% of the space, and then our IT department is going to come up here and use the rest of the space, and the remainder is common area. We worked with the city on draft terms. Initially started this as a temporary, just to fill in the gap for the city hall renovation, and then we made a decision that it made sense to make it a 10-year lease that's renewable, and discussions moved on from there. We drafted the terms. We kept the board in the loop on the term as we move forward. We've also been working with Fairfax on the cost share implications related to the 5th floor, and I think we're all in a good spot at the moment. 2 weeks ago, City Council did approve the city manager to execute the lease, and we're asking the board to see if we can ratify the lease so we can execute it and move forward.
Any discussion from the board?
Question? Okay. So I noticed in the memo, and I believe we discussed this before, but that in lieu of rent, the city is going to provide 25,000 donation annually to LEAP. That isn't reflected in the lease document itself. The lease document just says the city is going to pay us rent. On page 2.
Yes, we're working, I'll let Ms. Waters kind of explain it, but we're working around our covenant language, including the master indenture of trust, to make sure that we're noting that this money can be used for non-rate revenue it's tagged as non-rate revenue, so it can go to Darwin. I don't know if you want to explain that.
And we worked with bond counsel on this, and so the recommendation was to not reference LEAP, but in Article 5, subsection 3, amount paid may be used by a landlord for any lawful purpose other than to pay or offset debt service obligation. So that's the key language that will allow us to put that towards LEAP.
Okay,
He included the same language in the city's building services agreement, so that we just got our first check today. And that allows us to funnel that, those funds to Darwin before. That's the intent.
is there any like commitment that can be made on our part to use the funds for that purpose? So, you know,
We have committed in the MOU, we committed in writing.
Okay.
in exchange
It's just not in-
It's just not in here because what bond counsel recommended is this particular language.
Okay.
But I feel like there's enough memorialized that no one could really deviate from that without subsequent agreement with the city.
great. Another question I had was, since the city's not really paying rent and the rent money is spoken for, are there any ongoing costs that are associated with having them here that we might end up, covering, considering you're not paying us rent?
There'll be small costs for utilities. The space is already being heated and lit. So it'd just be water usage, but a lot of usage for the water in this building is coming from the plant, so it's negligible in the grand scheme of things. We do need to work out who's going to clean their space, whether they get their own cleaning service or not. That's something we're gonna be able to clean before already for that and common area, but that's another area where we'd share.
Their IT will be separate, correct?
Correct. Yeah, they'll have their own comp drop and IT, their own IT build out that's being done by the city. Their standard.
Any other questions?
Thank you. I'll move to approve. Dear, please.
There's a second.
Aye.
Belli, all in favor? It's actually a monumental decision. It is a monumental decision. When we built this building, we knew we had an empty floor. Thinking about startup companies using it. This is a very good outcome. Co-location. Co-location. Think of the opportunities that will create.
Are there any particular opportunities for collaboration that you all have in mind? Having them on the premises?
I have not talked about that.
Just curious.
I would say, is being around governmental organizations with people, some departments are out in the field, some are in the building with central management. It's the discussions in the parking garage and the elevator over, the water fountain, the water cooler. Kind of conversations where people have interactions and come up with ideas that end up helping both organizations. So it's a matter of being around each other that lead to ideas and probably better collaboration when it comes to just sitting across the table and working through an issue. Because they're not strangers from across town. They're people who are in the same building and have known each other and know about each other's families, and it just will work. It will work for them.
Think about the stormwater projects the city has on the docket coming up in the next decade. Think of the work the city is doing to renovate their aspects of the sewer lines, how that affects our interceptors. The opportunities for interaction. Great. This is good news. And good news for Lee too. Right. New business, election of officers. I've been on the board since 2011. And I have to say, this organization is in the strongest spot it's been in that period. in all dimensions, in all dimensions. Depth of talent within the organization. So public support for this institution in the community because of the projects and things we do. Strength of the board itself. Depth of talent we have on this table. It's probably stronger than it's ever been. So continuity matters, right? Continuity matters. And I hope we can continue the track we're on. And I want to contribute to that, but mindful that the board should be thinking 10 years and 20 years out. And I've got to say, I'm not going to be here in 10 years. Maybe some of you will, but I probably won't. So if we do keep the current composition the way we have it, I'd like to work over the next year to worry about a succession plan, developing the board so that everybody can do every task required. Those most important tasks are enabling CEO to succeed. That's the job for them. And setting rates that are fair, transparent, and equitable. Those are the two things the board must do. So continuity, yes, but longevity and sustainability equally important. So if I talk to each of you individually, I'll entertain a motion. Vice Chair.
I'd like to we elect John Hill as chairman. We'd like Jim Beal as vice chair. And we'd like Abraham Caldwell as secretary treasurer. Keeping the positions that we can occupy.
And keeping the assignments
Keeping the assignments.
as they are. Any discussion? Is there a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. That was quick. Thank you all. And right off the customer account, very different topic. Very different topic.
So there's a revised memo to bring forward. It's longer,
It's longer.
with more explanation.
Let's give everybody a minute to read it. I had a lot of questions. I know Mr. Jenks had a lot of questions. This is also very important. Mr. Carl, just a technical question on inactive customer accounts. These accounts meet the criterion you have below the memo. Are they still receiving service? No. They're not receiving any kind of treatment service from Alex.
No, we're dependent on the Virginia American Water billing records, so we're not, at that point, we're not receiving water records or usage for that specific account. Person.
I have the same question. I would suggest that be
Both things.
mentioned somewhere, because I was wondering, like, how does this fit in with delinquent accounts? But
Yep.
that makes sense. And the list of criteria, it's only has to meet any one of the criteria on the list, right? This is or is it?
So the way that we go through it is, going back, when you go back to the financial policy, we included a copy in there as well on page 10. We kind of, and Mr. Roberts, you can kind of explain how we went through and how we coded this. You kind of work your way down the list. You quantify your accounts that are inactive and eligible for 3A, B through 11. Fortunately.
Okay, so one or more of the criteria.
Yeah.
Okay,
Question, are these mostly people who have rented like a house or townhouse and have subsequently moved, or somebody who sold the property and moved and just left it unpaid bills? Assuming that anybody who owns property and hasn't moved, they're gonna have water service.
Yes,
Right.
yeah, that would be the.
Second question, do we have the authority under state law to lien property, even the property owner?
Yeah.
If it was the renter?
Both, under both scenarios, owner delinquent or tenant delinquent. With the tenant delinquent, you have to go through 2 steps. Before that, one is you try and get part of the security deposit, and then you have to go through collections, and then after, I believe it's 3 months, you can then put a lien on the property after coordinating appropriately with the property owner. It's set forth in the codes.
Do we do that?
We have not.
Realize that there for smaller accounts would make sense to go through the whole process. At some level, again, that's what we're.
So for the large commercial accounts, that's something we've been discussing, staff or managing delinquencies. Because the last thing we want to do is shut off a meter to, an apartment building with 100 people.
And a lot of mortgages, not all, but a lot of mortgages have a requirement. You can't have any liens on properties. So sometimes you put the lien on and the mortgage company calls up the owner and says, you better take care of that lien or you're in mortgage default. And you can then go sell the property. And that usually gets, if that happens, property owners suddenly have money to pay that. I'm not suggesting we take any different action than what's proposed here. I think for next, we do this annual. That as you get planning the next cycle around, think about for what's the threshold for a write-off.
I think the important thing too to note in this value of $114,000. I think some of these accounts have been inactive for several years. And we had done this recently as an organization, and after the customer service transition, we're able to get everything coded properly and catch up a little bit.
Mr. Carly, I think you've mentioned to me that we have tried using private firms to collect these, that very limited success.
I think for inactive accounts, we've been able in the past, looking back at customer service records, we were able to recover 1% of the arrears.
1%.
So what we've done now that we've transitioned to ESC, and Mr. Roberts, you can expand on this, is we follow the process outlined in the memo. It takes about 60 days to work through that process. And another thing we found is Promise reaching out. Promise is also reaching out at the same time to get customer money payment plan. We've actually had inactive account customers sign up for payment plan to repay the bill. So that was, we've seen more success with that approach than we had going through collection. Mr. Robinson.
The other thing we might want to note too is we haven't actually followed through with the disconnection communications since COVID. So after the migration to ESC, new customer service group, they've begun this communication process again for the first time in several years, right? So I think we're seeing a positive trend in people hopping on payment plans, making payments, and a lot of that can be attributed to this effort along with Promise Pay and their outreach for for payment plans.
Another vehicle that's available, I know, for collecting back taxes and fees to municipalities is set up debt collection, where you tell the state, these people owe you money, and the state for income tax refunds. And withhold those dollars. I don't know if utilities have that with the state umbrella of what buckets they will go try to find people for income tax refunds, includes utilities or not. But that's one other source to try, because all it takes is some, and I'm sure what data requirement is, all data the state needs, but it's giving them basically a computer file that says, here's the list, here are the amounts, and then we don't have to do anything other than answer phone calls. People call, and they're very happy with their income tax refund. They thought they were going to get this, but this is, rerouted to us rather, or part of it to us rather than to them.
We did look into this, and we have to be able to supply social security numbers. And I spoke to Loud and Water, and they utilize this. They utilize a third party because they don't collect social security numbers either. And so because of the prioritization of who gets that money first, we're at the very bottom. Loud and Water said by the time they pay the third party, and they get so little that they were looking to abolish that as a reasonable collection method. We do not take social security numbers, so we have to contract with a third party. So I think that's probably based on just one data point, but looking at our other collection efforts that we have not been employing yet with shutoffs and liens, trying to know what our delinquencies are after a period of time, and then coming back to determine if it would be worthwhile to hire a third party for the necessary data that the state requires.
We had a similar issue with the collections agencies in that Virginia American Water does not supply social security numbers to us when they provide the data. And that makes it a lot more challenging to recover those. But
I don't think that the collection efforts. And someone closes their account or after, but they still have a building. And you're sending out a past due notice on the bill. But if they move, you're gonna get the fine. Don't think of that.
The past due might be coming on the bill after the delinquent, and they're still at the property. That's how the whole process starts. But you're right, it wouldn't keep going, they wouldn't keep getting the past due bill if they don't see it. So that's when we start leveraging promise and a robocall.
Further discussion, if none, let's entertain a motion to approve.
So voted.
Second,
So
all in favor? Aye. Good discussion, by the way. Moving right along. Good news here. Construction Management Agreement Contract 24-024. Carl.
So I think last month we spoke to the board about the status and the plans for upgrading the Edwardsburg plant, which we refer to as the PPSU, or Preliminary Primary Systems Upgrade Project. We started the process for procurement several months ago, and we're bringing to the board this evening recommendation to enter into a contract with Baldwin Shooting to provide pre-construction services. This is a construction management at risk contract, meaning that we first approve a contract for pre-construction services and then a contract amendment for guaranteed maximum price at between 60 and 90% design. So we'll be coming back to the board later for approval. And currently we're estimating the GMP cost estimate around $70 million. That's including the memo of the class 5 estimate based on a conceptual level of design to have a plus 50% buffer on the top end of it. So The pre-construction services amount is about $1.5 million. The board approval will give us see the funds.
Talked about this at length last month.
Okay.
Every month. before. Any discussion? By the way, I thought the memo was very clear. Discussion. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Ms. Colbrelli, all, a second?
Second.
Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Rick? Now we have a great presentation on progressive design build.
So Ms. Bian's going to give us a presentation on the progressive design build. So just a quick background on this. We were, last two projects we issued construction contracts for were construction management at risk. Prior to that, a first major design build job was the River Internal project that was fixed price design build as a lump sum contract. Before that, under different statute and code and different criteria, this building was constructed and the NMF was constructed via Clark and Allen Shooting using construction management at risk, but at that time, 90% of work had to be subbed out by the client. We're looking at progressive design build to be used and leveraged for our tertiary systems projects. Another upgrade project for the back end of the plant, which acts like a water filtration portion of our facility. The reason that we're looking at progressive design build is because we can procure a single contractor and designer in one contract. So it reduces our administrative burden a bit as staff. Caitlin's smiling. In addition to that, it also gives us the ability to get experience with progressive design build. We looked at progressive for the tunnel project, given its usage of time and given the specialized work in underground construction. Progressive, we did not proceed with progressive because we were worried about the off ramp at the GMP stage and missing the deadline. If you remember back to 2018, 2019. So with that long-winded introduction, I'll tell you.
Now I get to walk through the pretty illustrated slides that describe all of what Mr. Carl just went through. But so I think this is the fourth. I mean, there's always the potential for another delivery method, but this is the fourth delivery method on the slide that you've seen a couple of times. So I'll thank you, Mr. Carl, for the introduction. Lauren, if you could advance. We are here partially to start talking about progressive design build because we anticipate, as Mr. Carl said, using this delivery model or method for an upcoming project. Additionally, when the board all approved the new version of our collaborative delivery policy, it became effective on July 1st to be responsive to changes that had occurred and are now effective in the Virginia Public Procurement Act. And so we're starting with what changed and how does that impact how AlexRenew does collaborative delivery moving forward. So the starting point with VPPA, Virginia Public Procurement Act, is that design bid build is the default construction delivery method. And so when we use design build construction management, we have to do a little bit more to prove that it's the right tool in our toolbox. And so the major changes that came out this legislative period that impact collaborative delivery, there are two major ones. So first, in the actual stage of procurement where we shortlist, we cannot use a team's past experience on construction management or design build jobs as a factor for evaluating and getting them to a short list. It's an interesting change.
What's the logic?
I don't know.
I don't know that we have, there was a lot of work between both Ms. Waters and Mr. Carl based on past experience of that. We're not exactly sure how we arrived at that, but I think that is ultimately the team that is selected can be selected based on their experience with construction management and or design build. projects, but it just can't be evaluated as a factor at the shortlist stage.
At one point, the legislation said you could consider previous design build or CMAR experience at all. And at the last minute, we tried to get a lobby behind it and change it any way we could. We can at least consider them on step 2, which is silly.
And the second major change that is partially why we're here this evening is that we now moving forward, before we start procurement for a fabric delivery project, we need to come to the board with a proposal for a resolution that the board would approve, authorizing us to use either design build or construction management as a delivery model for a specific project. And so as part of that, we have to demonstrate that design bid build is not fiscally advantageous and or is not actually practical in this scenario. And we have been doing this process internally, but this is really kicking this process to be a part of the board's consideration before we go down the path of using these types of delivery methods.
Not practicable or fiscally advantageous. The entire history of when first, just plain old ordinary vanilla design build got put into state law was painful because the architect and engineering professions and some of the contracting professions felt any change is going to cut them out. And I think this is, in a sense, what this represents. There's, gee, other firms are getting business. I'm not. Let's get the law changed. Let's make the requirement more onerous to be carried out. That's what the silly thing is. You can't consider it the screening stage, but you can at the next stage as far as experience with it. That makes no sense. There used to be design build toward at the state level. You had to take every single project to. That was just painful. Foster's fire station that are on was the first one of the state. And it took like 2 years to get it through the system. So the whole set of anything other than design bid build has just been very resistant. The powers that companies that have made money the old way have just not been wanting to allow changes, and they happen. But with some pain and some unnecessary steps that we have.
I think regardless, we see advantages to using these types of delivery models that even with additional administration, I think that we're going down the path of using construction management risk, used fixed price design build, and I think this is another tool. And hopefully it won't be majorly painful for the board to take on this new step.
And in the context of the law, this board is the local government body.
This is a slide that I've seen now when we were talking about construction management risk. As Mr. Pearl said, we use fixed price design build for the tunnel system project. And really, we'll walk through how this is a mix of these two procurement methods to get to progressive design build. It's kind of a mix of those two. So there aren't any more at this point. So this is the last time we'll present the delivery model this based on this slide. Next one. So the main advantage, and Mr. Pearl hit on this, is that similar to the Revenue Tunnel project, with a progressive design build, AlexRenew is contracting with only one entity. And so that design build entity then has contracts with the engineer, the architect, any subcontractors, suppliers to actually do the work associated with both design and construction for the project. And there's just a note that design build entity could be contractor led, designer led, or some mix of that. This slide walks through the anticipated process for what we would go through from procurement all the way through operations of a project. So the first piece of this is procurement, and Virginia code requires a two-step process, just like we went through for PPSU's CMAR project and solids upgrade CMAR project. So we start with a request for qualifications, then proceed to a request for proposals. Contract award is made. That's made based on, similar to the CMAR process, a pre-construction services agreement. Then the AlexRenew and the design builder proceeds with design, ending in a GMP or guaranteed maximum price amendment. And so Mr. Pearl hit on, this is when the off-ramp is available. We're getting to a GMP amendment based on 60 to 90% design. If we do not get to agreement on the price, there's the ability to finish out design and then bid out the work via competitive seal bidding.
Statement here. Agreement with the design. Told for, you agree on the percentage of design. And based on the project, you decide it's 60%, it's 70%, it's 90%. What you're saying.
For the GMP. So our contracts, the industry general standard is 60 to 90. We set all of our contracts up to have the GMP come in at 90. But we're getting pricing at 30, 60, and 90. So we have an idea of where we're going on pricing. So it's not a shock at 90%, but we're trying to set the GMP at 90. We just think it gives better certainty around the design and launch between 60 and 90.
And then proceed after GMP amendment to construction and operations. The main for this over design bid build, and then additionally what's unique about this, the main benefits is of course only contractor engagement on the design. You're bringing in a contractor as design is happening, as opposed to getting design already all the way progressed and then going through procurement for a contractor. Additionally, we hit on this, but it is a single point or a single contract for AlexRenew. We're only working with one team as opposed to multiple contracts. There's one procurement process to bring that one team on, and it accelerates because of that minimized procurement. It's accelerating the overall schedule of the project. Similar to all the other collaborative delivery methods, there is the ability to incorporate non-price factors into evaluation and get to a best value evaluation for selecting a team. And that's usually beneficial from our standpoint to get a really good partner in doing the work that we need. And then similar to the CMAR projects, it's open book price or cost estimating. So we're actually sitting down with the contractor and developing the cost in order to get cost certainty prior to the design completion. And then similar to solids and PPSU projects, we can do more smaller discrete projects within the contract in smaller GMPs.
But it's design and construction for the same entity. We also get a contract, they have performance requirements. So that you don't have a separate designer and a separate contractor pointing fingers at each other that says it's your fault. This, the process doesn't get the water as clean as it's supposed to or something. So does this help? Basically, by marrying those two folks together, it just has to work.
That's the best case scenario. I think ultimately you're all, it's best to approach it that you're all in it together and work as a approach it that your partners in order to see the best success, and that minimizing as much conflict as possible from our side helps smooth that process.
Well, maybe give an example. When we studied progressive and what's progressive versus fixed price for the tunnel project, we looked at the performance piece of it. If we AlexRenew could let that risk go out in performance, less than 4 overflows per year, 140 million gallons captured, right? We could have said 40 go out for progressive, and that design build entity, the designer, most likely to the professional. So through the professional liability insurance is going to be responsible for the performance of the system that doesn't perform. It's on them. We felt that was too risky, so we ended up taking the responsibility in-house for the performance and did the hydraulic design in-house as AlexRenew through the owner's advisor team. So in this scenario, that performance is definitely being pushed on to, the performance of the system is being pushed out to the design build.
If you flip back just to the previous slide. I want to make sure I look at everything in terms of risk. Okay, so I want to study that off ramp. Okay, in the event that we exercise that off ramp, we would have a complete design, right, that we, the owner, would be our property, correct? So we could take that and go out and do a classic design bid build, right? Chances are it's a better design because contractors more construction knowledge, right?
In theory, that's what
In theory,
you're getting a contractor engaged during this process of the design. And so arriving at a more constructible design that has input from that contractor.
Value engineering that's built in.
but from a risk point of view, it manages risk perhaps better.
And bidding on a blind set of documents without any discussion.
Yeah. Again, this is all theoretical. Thank you. Good diagram.
And the preferred method of procurement. I can't let it go, I'm sorry. No, it still hurts.
This slide hits on maybe the best both pieces of why there's a schedule of savings. So it's comparing design bid build to progressive design build. You see the engineer has to be procured, then they're doing their design, and then you're procuring a contractor, and then construction starts. And in that scenario, you have minimal contractor input until they really come online and they've been procured. In this instance, there's one procurement, so you're saving. There's less procurement time, less staff administration on going through that procurement process. And then you're bringing the contractor on to provide input. Ultimately, arrive at a design that should have decreases in risk and then increase in thought around constructability.
I think one other thing, Ms. Jan, to that point, their contractors not guessing what they're pricing. You're sitting in a room, they know exactly what you want at the moment, just talking about the, your contractual terms, conditions are all kind of cooked by that point. We also talked about the details of how work's gonna progress, what's a go, what's a no-go. What can I do? Can I shut this pump off? Can I keep this pump running? That's the benefit of having that collaborative period with the contracting design and saying.
I think you hit on that in with some of the other work, but with all of these projects that are happening at our plant, there's wastewater that has to continue flowing and being treated. And so there's complexity to the work that we're doing that we want to make sure that teams are being thoughtful and putting forth recommended approaches that minimize the risk around keeping wastewater treated.
Just having contractors here to talk to us, they can understand what it is to think, we can work together to figure that out.
This slide hits on the best value, which again is aligned with the CMAR projects where you're able to evaluate teams based on non-price factors like their experience, qualifications, their approach to how they're going to do the work. That's mixed with the price factors, the pre-construction services, and the contractor's fees to get to a best value selection. Slide walks through the procurement process that matches what we just went through with CMAR and as well as the fixed price design build contract for the revenue tunnel. So we start with a request for qualifications. Teams then submit their statements of qualifications that are evaluated in order for us to get to a short list. Then proceed to the request for proposals phase where a request for proposals is issued to those teams. We work through proprietary meetings with the teams. We have the teams submit the technical and management proposals. And then meet for interviews with the teams in order to get to a recommendation for award that's negotiated and then brought to the board for approval. And after board approval, the teams are issued the notice to proceed.
Excuse me. But the qualifications process, you're evaluating them with qualifications, but you can't consider design build.
Correct.
But in the request for proposals, you can.
Correct. This is the last slide, just putting on for the board's understanding the procedures for procurement of construction management at risk and design build. That particular policies I called it earlier was approved and when it became effective July 1st, a couple weeks ago, to incorporate this new code language. Moving forward, for staff to use or recommend the use of any collaborative delivery model, we would be coming to the board for approval ahead of issuing a request for qualifications. And then the board would also have approval at the pre-construction phase, similar to what just happened tonight, PSU, and then the GMP phases for as design proceeds. And as Mr. Kroll hit on, we anticipate in September bringing forth a resolution for the tertiary assistance upgrade project to be go through the procurement process as a progressive design build.
Let's stay on this point, this light blue point. That's really that's what you're asking, right? So our next meeting is September, August meeting. What data we need in front of us to make that decision?
We anticipate putting forward a resolution that follows the code language, demonstrating why,
Demonstrating.
why it's feasible, why in this scenario, there's language around it's a complex project, why providing the board with more information about why a design build, bid build method would not be practical or fiscally advantageous, but also why in this, the mix of doing wastewater work, it really is advantageous to use this to minimize risk, to minimize the amount of time that we're going after procurement, to accelerate that schedule, to get a contractor involved.
Now, let me get a little academic here. What measures do we use? Is it dollar savings or time savings?
Proving that the fiscally advantageous.
Fiscally advantageous.
In the previous examples, we looked at staff administrative.
Okay. Administrative cost.
And I think the other big piece is change order. Right? You're signing a design bid build, you're signing up for a contract with real no vetting of your resting your laurels on a little bit. And, you know, design bid build, you tend to typically have a lot more change orders that you could result in added cost to the job, or we don't have the right qualification, so it's added risk to the plan. So it's going to be probably a risk and cost discussion in the resolution.
I mean, the words in the legislation, again, legislation is legislation, right? Not always logical. Not practical. Design bid build is practical. Problem. So I think the argument for this approach is fiscally advantageous. We have to prove it's fiscally advantageous, and that's either our internal costs or the total cost of the project.
Practical, though, goes to complexity, and that's why, so you have that sort of preamble language, which is the operative language, and then you get into what actually has to be provided to justify, and it talks about the complexity of the project. So the way I read it is, you can demonstrate the project is complex, and you can check the practicable box, and then you can show that our staff time and the other factors make it fiscally advantageous to go this way, and you check that box.
I think it's still be a qualitative resolution, on it. There's gonna be hard numbers in it. From the quantitative standpoint, but X versus Y.
No, and numbers can be phony too. Right?
It would be at this stage.
But doesn't have to be numbers, but
You know, talk about risk.
I just want to make sure we as a board are defending our position when we make that decision.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to risk. The reason we select these models is because we're doing this. We have compliance risk, we have, you know, risk to safety, there's a lot of risks that we have in it, out there. At a complex active wastewater treatment plant.
Doesn't schedule on something into voters practical.
It's the issue of, the determination we have to prove and litigated in the state as case law or examples or a lot of cases. I think in Virginia, I think we made a reasonable effort. Judges don't second guess, so you should actually apply. So should go into the process and stuff. Because each step of the way is bad and you have a reasonable document. But still, that's the case.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any case law on this. And this language, while some of it's new, what was there in existence?
This,
There wasn't.
it's there. It just didn't have to go to the board.
Yeah.
It was there in a different, it was this language there before, so we had to write a resolution internally that we worked with general counsel and Dwyer Woods on the last two jobs. It just didn't have to come to the board. So it did look similar to that, but I think we're gonna kind of go over the top a little bit, make it knock that apart. It's gonna be a public document.
Okay.
So the idea, the intent would be, I think we'd like to send this resolution out with the August board package as a draft, which gives you all a month. We'll probably, we might be one person without a say on that. Gives you all a month then to give feedback before the September board meeting. We can bring a pretty final resolution to the September board meeting. But you'll get a draft in August before that.
Yeah, there is no board meeting in
But
August.
we still sign that packet.
Plan your vacations accordingly.
This meeting says we send out a packet, we send out a packet, right?
It's a very short agenda. It's a very short agenda.
It is. It's the monthly outcomes, but we'll include this for the film.
Here's further discussion. Thank you for teeing it up so well. We're ready, we'll be ready. Okay, monthly outcomes, Mr. Carl.
On July 12th, marked 68 years since our plant received wastewater flow. That was our anniversary on Friday. It's Waters and I have been doing some digging in very old dusty papers and prepping for our upcoming great workshop. Much other than.
68 is. 68 is not all that old.
Paper kind of.
You held up a lot better than the book.
It's making up the page.
68 is still around.
Yeah.
I'll attest to that.
Page 2 of the monthly outcomes, we were recognized by Water of the Future from the joint award between Mark and Aqua. In addition to that, we received our certificates from Achievement for Excellence from GFOA for fiscal year 2023. Who's got a question? So that's good to finance team. Moving ahead, there's a lot in here if you haven't read the monthly report, because June was a really busy month for us. Jumping ahead to page 4, we do have the preliminary year-end numbers in here. At the top of the page, as expected, we are a bit over again on our wastewater treatment charge revenues. We expected that given the conservative decisions we made regarding suppressed flows and COVID over the years. O&M, we came pretty much on points, off by $400,000, and then our total expenses are a little low given our capital spend. Respect to the major work we have going on, we spend about 60% of the capital budget over the year, but we did spend a little over on the IR. So I think we did a little bit better this year than last year on the capital spend.
Be correct that basically capital, because of multi-year projects, we're looking at how did we end up, what's the bottom line here, we just set those differences between budget and actual side. And my numbers would say roughly, you do that, you end up with about $7 million gain surplus or money we didn't spend. It makes you like figure out capital reserves, what we want to do.
Page 5, Mr. Hill, the tax reserves are back as well as debt service coverage. We'll keep them in the monthly report for the second of the month. We're doing well there. Mr. Roberts, did you want to cover customer delinquencies? I'm going to be talking about leave here in a second.
Yeah, sure. So if you look at the chart on page 5, you can see we're starting to see some of the results of our communications efforts, as well as that promise outreach. I think we've seen an increase in active payment plans here of late, and we've seen a decrease in the number of delinquent accounts. That total delinquent dollar amount sort of has flatlined here, and a lot of that can be attributed to like large commercial customers, as well as people on payment plans. That money's not coming in as quickly as people are, basically no longer delinquent.
Isn't this number of accounts on payment plans, is that higher than it has been? It seems like that's
Oh, yeah.
number has gone
At
up.
the beginning of the year, it was at 99
Right,
residential customers, and it jumped up since the beginning of the period.
great.
Yeah, we dropped out of the 70s at one point.
So.
And a lot of that's attributed to Promise has done sort of like a blitz of text messages to customers during different periods. So they did one in February, they've done one leading up to our disconnection.
So if I'm in arrears and I create a payment plan, I am no longer delinquent.
Your account is in good state, as long as you keep up with the payments.
Yeah. Doesn't mean I've paid up all my arrears. All it means is I'm on payment plan.
So not be discounted.
It's encouraging.
Yeah.
But not conclusive. Just, as a finance guy. Don't have the money in hand.
And I think, so we sent our first list for disconnections for non-payment to Virginia American Water. I don't suspect they'll be able to do many residential customers because of the laws that are in place around temperature.
We won't see 80-degree days. The way things go until October.
Yep. But that said, I think we've seen some promising action towards leave, and I think we'll see a continued increase in people enrolling in Promise pay plans. And I think those are all good.
So the shut-offs, the disconnections. So that Virginia American Water can't disconnect during hot weather,
92.
90 degrees. They can disconnect commercial customers. Not residential.
but have the people who are kind of like teed up for disconnection once the temperature drops, have they been notified of that fact?
So we haven't notified them about the temperature. Well, I don't know that would
Yeah,
necessarily be.
no, I'm just wondering if they know that like they're due to be disconnected.
Oh, yeah. They've gotten at this point multiple phone calls, multiple letters, one's certified mail. They've gotten emails, they're getting text messages from Promise.
We just haven't, sorry, I was just, it's just, is there a way to verify that they've like gotten all of those messages? Like, do they confirm receipts?
So yes and no, the certified letter is the best way to do that. And that, has mixed results in how you can track it. But that's the idea behind the certified letter. We also personally went out and hung door hangers on many of these customers a few months back.
And we're also doing a joint door hanger now with Virginia American Water. We had a productive meeting with them last week. or it's coordinating and choice the door hanger, they'll be putting the door before they shut off.
So our notifications say you're in danger of shut off if you don't do this, but we don't give them a date because of the weather.
Yeah, so as the messages, as you get to the second round of messages, they become a little bit more urgent. It's like you must make your payment immediately to avoid disconnection. We don't say on this date because we don't technically know exactly what the date will be for a number of reasons, including the temperatures.
What happens if we do start shutting off in October, whenever we drop down below 92, and we spike again, like an Indian summer? Oh, the right term anyway. But do we then turn it back on and then shut it back off? Like, does it start getting a little yo-yo?
So Virginia American Water tries to turn customers back on within 24 hours, and the way the legislation's written, you can't disconnect if it's going to be 92 degrees in, I believe it's 24, maybe 48 hours. So you have to look at the forecast for the next day as well.
And then there's weekend restrictions as well. And holidays.
Yeah, and we don't disconnect on Friday, we don't disconnect on weekends. So that limits the days. Also, Virginia American Water, because they have to follow the same legislation, are most likely going to be backed up on their own disconnections, which they may have to do first, so we have to take those.
So they only shut off for a day until payments made.
Yeah, sorry, once paid, they try to
Oh,
reconnect within
okay.
24.
I was like, that doesn't make sense. If
Sorry.
you're only shut off for a day.
Sorry,
Figure it out.
that's my fault.
So if they get shut off and be in a payment plan or talk on the phone, that's agreed to then the 24 hours out, that agreement plan.
Yep.
Return back.
Yeah, but if a customer made a payment plan, that would actually put them in good standing and we would reconnect. They don't have to pay their bill in its entirety, which is the way a lot of utilities function.
That whether they're shut off on Friday so that people can make payment on Thursday, or make payment so that they get shut off and turn back on for the weekend.
Yes, that's the idea. So you only the customer.
Aren't our lists with Virginia Water aren't the same, right? I mean,
No.
you could potentially be delinquent with us, but not that, right?
So Mr. Carl's laughing because we just had a discussion about this with the
Okay.
public, and we're trying to better coordinate our efforts, and it is a bit challenging because of their customer service database and the way that functions, the way work orders submitted, the way their field services operate. So we're kind of working through ways that we could better go out and avoid the situation where you're disconnecting for one utility and then going back out and disconnecting for another utility.
That was what I was gonna ask. So if you get disconnected, but you pay your Virginia American Water, in theory, they just have it on,
Yep.
but they still haven't paid us.
So for the last 4 years since COVID, Virginia American Water, they don't request information from us about delinquency. They go out, they disconnect the same customers we have, and then they've reconnected them when they pay the Virginia American Water balance, and there could still be a AlexRenew balance. They're not verified in place.
So the first time, that's one of the things we're working on, just to door hanger to remind them, hey, make sure if it's saying on both your bills, we shut off for you. So that's one step we're taking. The customer service piece, what we were worried about while we had the call, was making sure we were going to do that double connect. Given the way they do it, and that Mr. Robertson mentioned, we will, we're going to see how it goes, and if it's not an issue, great. If it is, we'll have to work around, and we've got commitment from the CEO that they're going to work with us at this, that is kind of what we're doing for double shut offs.
And it's in their best interest as well. They don't want to shut off customers twice. It's easier on the field services than shut once.
Further discussion of outcomes. I do have to highlight though, that back on page 6, community engagement. 217 people came to this place to vote. That's a lot of people. That's on top of the 545 that came to meetings. City of what, about 140,000 people? That's almost 1,000 people a month. Yep. That's
Yeah, and there's an updated lead dashboard. It's pretty. Oh, either way. Do we have slides, Lorna, or do we?
You all have to.
Yeah, there's an updated handout in your folder. Green folder.
I love the one we got, the old one.
Now it's-
Now it says 3.
Nah, I know, it's up to 3 now.
Oh, it's increased 300%.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
I know. Yeah, sure. Fire away, fire away.
Just first of all, this is awesome. Thank you. This is, you guys are so good at data visualizations. So I guess just a comment. I think it's really interesting to overlay the locations of where the households are that have requested leave assistance with the number or the percentage of households that are receiving SNAP benefits. So I think it, I mean, it just shows that that doesn't necessarily correlate, right? Like the first person, when we had our one household signing up was in one of the lowest SNAP percentage census tracts in the entire city. So I think that's just a good lesson to keep in mind is, anyway. And then just a couple requests for additional information that aren't shown on here currently. So, so we've got the tracker of how many dollars have gone out. It was easy to tell how much each household was getting when it was one household, but now it's combined. So it'd be good to have like a chart showing both how much is going out per household. Maybe when,
Like an average district.
yeah, well, when it's only 3, you could kind of do a 3-line
Yeah.
table. But when it's that's becomes unworkable, then we could average. But I'm also, in addition to the number of dollars per household, I'm very curious to know what that represents as a percentage of that of the household's outstanding debt. So like for customer number 1 that got the max, which was $350, did that cover their outstanding balance, or do they still have significant need for more funds? Because I think that's useful data to have as we might think about tweaking program design in the future. Obviously not all 3 households have received the maximum because that would have been over $1,000 total. So maybe they requested less because they had a smaller outstanding balance. Like I just think that would be good to. It's awesome. It's really, really great.
This is execution.
One, so our balance is about to go up to $75,000-$80,000 over pretty much overnight. With the PO box booked out. That's a good deal for it. So once we get that worked out, we get to check into Dollar Energy. We're proposing to drop the income requirement once we get this balance up. We'd like to drop the income requirement. What we've learned, and that's not just, we're not just doing this off the top. Every utility we've talked to, every single one does not have an income requirement. And it's challenging enough to get people to sign up. It's even more challenging when you have to verify their income. Western Virginia Water, Prince William County, Virginia American Water, none of them currently really have an income requirement that they're vetting. The 2 authorities have no requirement at all for income. So we'd either like to drop it completely or raise it to a level of, say, 60,000 a year or something to try and get enrollment going, see if this thing's gonna take off.
There's a lot of data showing that these types of administrative burdens really suppress participation rates, even among people who qualify.
And then, Cameron, what we heard from the other utilities is that there's no real evidence of use of those that have the wherewithal of taking advantage of these programs. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's consistent with what I've seen.
You need a decision on this tonight or something you'll present?
We just gonna push change.
Say go do it.
We're going to talk about it, obviously, and get feedback. You know, we just moved very quickly. I realized today we didn't have any sort of policy or anything from the board. So I think we'd like to go back in time and actually put some documentation together for what we've done and formalize it in the form of a board policy for legal as well.
Yeah,
I think that would be very useful to have, to get leadership change, something like that. We have that policy that's governed, that's set by the board, and we work with you all on it. I think it should be reflected of our joint efforts and. So,
Reflecting what sorts of program design changes would require
Yeah.
our approval of this, that
Yeah.
just do on your own.
so that came up. That-
But you're not going to eliminate the
I think we
income requirement right now.
I think we should. Once we get the balance up to nearly $80,000, I think we might have a hard time getting that money out the door.
But the-
We're already sitting on almost $20,000. We're still capped at how much per account.
So we could- Yeah,
I'd rather get the money out there than just have it sit.
yeah, the cap is different between stay. I just think we're moving
It's gonna be challenging.
we had a lengthy discussion with Virginia and Water regarding the universal affordability tax. We learned more about that during our call with them last week, and they're making estimates based on enrollment, based on their own experience with their low income program or their dollar energy program. They're making estimates based on just thinking they're not going to get the numbers. Because people just don't want to borrow, or they don't want to go through the process of having to do the extra step. And this one is just that other authorities are not going to do.
Let's hear from all the board members, though. You feel I hit the spot, but
I think given that we've got $20,000, $19,000 something that hasn't been used, that it's worth making that change, to see what happens. We're going to have a lot of money in it, so I think you just said, won't get the money out there.
I have given with that experience of utilities as a piece of information that they haven't seen any use. It's fine, go ahead and make a change, and it's something that's in concrete, and if we discover something different, we can always reverse it.
Secretary, let the minutes reflect that the sentiment of board is to relax the income requirement.
Well, actually, you said
Relax to the point of elimination.
So relaxed.
I think Becky makes a good point
Yeah.
about how much is 350 really doing for people? Because if we do still have a hard time getting money out the door, then maybe 350 is too low if it's not really moving the needle for some people.
That's why it's like, we need that data,
Yeah,
so we can make that decision. It may be the case that that's enough for like 90% of accounts, in which case the
Right.
it. But if it still people are carrying large balances after receiving. There's just
Right.
in there right now.
Right.
It would be useful to have some kind of grid. It's like basically how much they provided and how much they have left, figure out ranges, so we can know whether or not, kind of the distribution of what how much we're providing versus how much is other.
do you mean ways to parse the data, or are you talking about ultimately based on data, maybe doing a graduated system?
I think
I
you mean the
think-
former, right?
It's just, so let's see what the data is, I guess, to get better ideas. Is it a few people, because averages can be deceiving.
Sure.
So it's a few people with a lot left, or a lot of people with a little, some.
So I think we can stack some bars on that.
You guys are good
Sure.
at.
Figure out how to do it, I think, so we get an idea of what the distribution looks like, that's
Okay, so give them guidance.
Yeah, so I think absent a policy, you know, I'd like to get a policy and bring it to the government, just so we have like kind of solidified from a board document standpoint. And then if we want to make changes, we'll bring it to the board like this and get approval from the board to make, turn it on, things like that.
I just want to make sure we're being cognizant, very sensitive to the fact that when any kind of fraud enters into these types of programs, the public relations blowback can be severe. I just want to make sure that if you receive one of these benefits, to justify, especially in a new program.
It can still be in the language of the program, so it's more like a self-attestation to ever.
Need.
Yeah.
Need. Because it's a young program.
It should, whatever the board does, should begin our financial policy. Yes, right off.
Yeah.
Everything else.
Also, we're not creating a policy.
I know one more question on operations. One of my neighbors told me last week, and said that he did read on next door that people who were signed up for automatic bill pay or getting notifications that they had to pay their bills. And this went through the total next door process, and someone said they had called AlexRenew and it had been worked out. Heard anything about that?
I mean, the thing with some of the next door threads and some of the sub Facebook groups is sometimes the threads, you have to check the date too, because I've had a few forwarded to me recently that were 2 or 3 months old. And it's kind of looking back at a problem that we've sort of rectified since then.
The last one that we had heard that came to us was through, it was on Facebook sub-thread, and it came through. We monitor it, but it also saw Councilman Chapman weighing in, and he sent us a separate note, and we had it resolved pretty quickly. I was doing the village,
Yep.
we had not heard anything like that in probably several months.
I didn't see it. It surprised me that it was coming so late.
You check it.
Yeah. I'll take a look.
This was next door.
This was interesting.
Yeah.
But this is also at least second hand, so.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. River Renew,
That's
A question before we leave the subject. We had talked in the prior meeting of supporting Virginia Americans, one of requests the State Corporation Commission to establish, talked about establish a loan assistance program. Have we indicated that State Corporation Commission would support that, or do you need something from us?
we, so, yeah, one, we indicate, the city just put in their, I don't know if you saw it, the city just put in their testimony to the rate increase as well as the comments on that. UAT, we did coordinate with the city to get feedback in there in support of UAT, universal affordability tariff. It was not as strong as we would like to see, so we are putting, and we made a commitment to Virginia Water, and Water is going to be drafting another support on the webpage in support of UAT.
The deadline is September 8th.
September.
That's on our to-do list. Okay, thank you. And we're waiting to see where the city went with it. It was not. It was fine. It wasn't. Got it.
They supported it in theory.
We weren't real happy with it.
So, well, the Virginia American Water may say they had, I think they said 10% of us take advantage of. I thought all the programs we cities put in place, 10% is a high number. And the advantage Virginia Americans practice. The results of when you look at their numbers, they round in certain directions, and directions end up with sometimes you say it's going to be 10%. Well, that gives you some of your cost recovery over on full bank customers, and if it's only 5%, well, just collect 5% more revenue than you've had in your rate file. So it's just And to some degree also, any rate filings by utilities, but they know they're gonna get shaved back, so this is one of those you ask for. Or it gets shaved back, you can see 10% to me seems like a high number, at least for the first couple of years.
Riverview.
If anyone heard the poet laureate remarks on Saturday at the city 75th anniversary, Hazel was mentioned.
I wasn't there, but 8 people texted me. While it was happening.
Your remarks. You know, there in the clip. Pile driving starting at Pendleton Street in the next 2 weeks, will last about a month. The last round of pile driving, they're driving sheets right now, if you drive by or something. Restoration starting in Bush Run, which is huge. Hopefully we get that underway and we can get ready for the planting day in fall. Seas have been discontinued at all sites except for Pendleton Street to support pile driving. In addition to that, a final council board work group meeting is on November 20th. That'll be the final, we're gonna sunset that group after November 20th and then provide a quarterly one-page flyer to council on a quarterly basis, to keep them apprised of the project. And we're gonna present that flyer to council board. That's a slide that we can. And we jump to the last page of the dashboard, you'll see, I believe that's Waleed walking through the tunnel one last time before we strip out the light. The tunnel is affected. Holes filled. Ready to go for flood.
Amazing,
Uh,
amazing.
See it in about a year from the day of the thing.
Okay, the important thing for the board is there will be a listening session at Pendleton Street the day before our September board. So that might be worth going to if the temperature dips below 90.
I think the focus on the upcoming listening sessions is going to be what's ahead and what to expect when we're done. Might be the last 2 lists, but
Amazing. Any other items?
I just found that next door. It was from just 2 weeks ago. This is fairly recent. And did you say this? It has to do with people getting hit with late fees who pay their bills by mail.
Yes.
Yeah. So one person posted and then a bunch of people were like, me too, me too. And they can't decide whether to blame us or the postal service.
I'll take a look.
So if you want to throw the USPS under the bus.
You know, the
It's
thread.
all
Yeah, I
automatic
can-
payment.
Got it? Okay.
It's all automatic payment. How's it supposed to?
What?
It's all,
If they
We're
mail,
sending
if they
their
mail
checks
the
in the mail?
Yep,
yeah, that's what it was, people on automatic payment.
No, this
Okay.
is about people who
Okay.
send in their checks in the mail, whose payments are posting very late compared to when they put the bill into the mail, and it's not something that's happened to them before.
I'll take it.
Why is this happening to me?
Seriously?
yeah.
I'm not doubting you, I'm doubting.
Yeah.
Yep. Any
There's
other
been
items?
very brief. in this- in that
Oh,
process, so.
always, always. Your motion to adjourn for the summer. Second?
Second.
On favor? Everybody enjoy August. What remains of July, and we'll see you in September. I hope the AlexRenew team can, if not relax, maybe cool off. Thanks, everybody.